If you spend a year in another culture, it will change your life. Guaranteed. Above all, they were human. Just like you, just like me, they were human. And this is really what tied everything together for me. Hey everybody, it's Jesse. I went to Catholic school when I was in elementary school. I went to Catholic school for 6.5 years. We studied the Bible. We studied the text of the Bible. I read large portions of the actual Bible. This was clearly an oral tradition that got set down in writing. It's the history of a people. So I studied Christianity by reading original sources. The text, the Bible, okay? And I went to church every Friday for 6.5 years. I also went to Mass on special occasions, holidays, weddings, funerals, all of this stuff. So I have an extensive religious background connected to Catholicism, but I don't consider myself a Catholic. I was never baptized. I'm not a practicing member of the Catholic Church. So what then are you? Well, I wanted to figure out what really resonates with me. So throughout high school and college, I studied first in my free time and then through actual coursework. I read books on Taoism, Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and in college I took classes on South Asian religions, including Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and then I also took coursework on Native American religions, and we read and studied mythologies from all over what's now the United States, including some more modern writings by Native American writers who talked about their own personal spirituality. In the meantime, when I was in high school, I used to go to Unitarian Universalist youth retreats with my friend Moon. Hi, Moon. Thanks, Moon, for introducing me to Unitarianism. Based on my own personal experience, Unitarianism has this open, welcoming sort of spirituality that's not at all dogmatic. And you're allowed to believe in love. You're encouraged to believe in love thy neighbor. You're allowed to interpret things as you see fit. And that seems appropriate to me because a lot of the beliefs that have been handed down to us over the millennia are dated, such as patriarchy, hereditary rulership. This is not the way we want to govern our societies and organize our governments anymore. We want to be open, inclusive. We want tolerance and equality. So where that conflicts with traditional religion, we say, okay, we've changed our minds, and we're allowed to change our minds. I liked Unitarianism. What I liked best about it was the youth retreats. It was great. I loved being able to spend the weekend with a bunch of other really cool kids. They were all way cooler than me, and I felt welcomed, and it was such a positive experience for me, especially at that time in my life. At some point, I started going to the sweat lodge ceremonies over at my friend Moon's house for the winter solstice. And this is arguably my first introduction to paganism. And then when I was in college, I spent a year overseas in Scotland, and I went to the Beltane Festival in Edinburgh. They still do this every year. It's an amazing festival. It's up on this hill. They have this huge bonfire, and people get dressed up in costumes, and there were these guys who would take swigs of petrol out of a jug and then spit it onto a flaming torch and breathe fire out of their mouths. And they're all dressed up like satyrs, and there's these women dressed up like shepherdesses, and It was an amazing experience. I highly recommend it. Anyway, so between winter solstice celebrations and Beltane in Edinburgh, this is my early introduction to paganism. I met some people in Portland who introduced me to the pagan community, the local pagan community in Portland, Oregon. So I was never a core member of the local pagan community, but I found myself really fascinated by paganism. I found myself thinking how much I would love to see paganism replace so many of the negative views and practices that I see in modern culture, because modern paganism being so amorphous allows for a broad range of views and practices, and it's all unified by a doctrine of love. It's all about people coming together to praise whatever they feel like calling it. Some people call it the goddess, some people call it the earth, some people call it the great all, whatever you want to call it. Call it God, call it Allah, call it Jehovah. It doesn't really matter what name you use when you refer to the higher forces. And then when I was in my mid-20s, I spent a year teaching overseas at a private school in Egypt. And that was one of the most amazing, mind-blowing, eye-opening experiences of my life. And anyone who's done something similar would say the same. If you spend a year in another culture, it will change your life. Guaranteed. For me, when I spent a year among Muslims, it taught me more about Islam than I had ever conceived of before. And this was shortly before 9/11. So 9/11 had not happened yet, and yet there was already a lot of conflict between Western culture and the Arab world. So this was constantly in my mind as I was there, and there was this dichotomy between my awareness of conflict between our cultures and my awareness of how humble and human and wonderful these people were who I was interacting with on a daily basis. They were filled with love, they were kind and generous. There were exceptions, obviously, because above all, they were human. Just like you, just like me, they were human. And this is really what tied everything together for me. Learning that people of such an amazingly different culture are still just as human as you and me taught me that there is nothing superior about any religion or religious practice. Thanks very much for listening to this video. As always, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please click that subscribe button and I would really appreciate it, and I will look forward to talking to you soon. Please also leave a message in the comments section down below and tell me about your own personal worldview, spiritual practices, and experiences interacting with other cultures. I'd be very interested to hear about it. All right, thanks very much, you guys. Namaste. Have a great day.